Okay guys, so we're going to be talking about circle graphs and how to make them this time. And what we're going to do is talk about things that we've already done. So right off the bat, we have this table here of the sports that kids in Mr. Franco's class like, and we need to finish the table and create a circle graph. So we know in his class that 14 out of 35 kids like football, 6 out of 35 like 14 out of 35 like hockey, 6 out of 35 like football, 10 out of 35 like basketball, and 5 out of 35 like baseball. And if I wanted to write these as a percent, you guys already know how to do that. I would take my 14 out of 35 kids, divide 35 by 14. We'd be like, oh, okay, so it's 0.4. Then if I want to turn that into a percent, multiply it by 100, and I would get 40%. So I could figure out how many kids like hockey. Or if I wanted to do the same thing for football, I'd be like, well, 6 out of 35 like football. 35 divided by 6, 6 divided by 35 I mean, would give me 0.17, multiply that by 100, and I get my 17%. So I already know how to figure out my percentage, which we've already done, but what I need to do is figure out how to turn that percent into an angle to make a circle graph. And really all it is something we've done 100 times before. We're just solving for a missing number. So if I want to try and figure out the angle of 40% in my circle graph, I have to know a few things. The main thing is I have to know that a circle is made up of 360 degrees. And I need to know how to use my compass to go and map whatever my answer is. So the first thing we need to do is know that, alright, if we want to go and graph hockey, we know that 40% out of 100%, so 40% of Mr. Franco students like hockey, and I need to figure out what that equals in my circle graph. So out of 360 degrees, what would 40% represent? Well, I would do what I've done before, and I just cross multiply. So I'd go 40 times 360, which gives me 14,400, and divide that by 100, and now we get 144 degrees. So I know that my first sort of thing that I need to graph is going to be 144 degrees. Now what if I want to do it for football? Well, same thing. I know that 17% out of 100 of his students like football, and I need to solve for x in my circle graph out of that 360 degrees. So I go 17 times 360 gives me 6,120. Divide that by 100, and I get 61.2 degrees, but we'll just go and say that it's 61 degrees, we'll round it down. And I do the same thing for each one. So if I were to try and figure out my 29 out of 100, is equal to, I don't know, over 360. I just cross multiply like we've done before. So 29 times 360 gives me 10,440 divided by 100, and I get 104.4 degrees, but I'll round that down. And then it's the same thing if I were to go and solve for 14 out of 100, 14% out of 100, and x over 360. Cross multiply again. 14 times 360 gives me 5,040 divided by 100, and I get 50 degrees. Now if I add them all up, so if I add up 144 plus 61 plus 104 plus 50, I should get 360 degrees. I end up getting 359, but that's because we ended up rounding. Being off by a degree or one is not the end of the world. But now I need to map each one of these. So we need to remember how to use our compass. So the first thing we need to do is make sure our compass lines up with the center of my graph. I'm like, alright, hockey, 144 degrees. So I need to find 144 degrees on my compass, which is right over here. Once I found it, I end up graphing it, and I'm like, all right, here's my 144 degrees. This is what hockey represents. Okay, so I've graphed hockey, and I would end up writing over here, I'd say, over here I don't really need the 144 degrees, you can have it, but I would write down hockey, and I'd say 40%. So now I figured out hockey. But then the next thing I need to do is figure out, all right, well, what about for football? So I need to take my protractor again, and whoops. I need to take my protractor, I'm just going to move this. So I need to rotate it so that it lines up with the line over here. Put it back on the dot. Make sure they line up. And I got to be like, all right, well, now I need to figure out 61 degrees. So I take my dot, got to make sure this is lined up. Get this to 61 degrees. And once we're at 61, same thing, graph it, and my 61 degrees fits right in. I'm like, all right, now I've done football, and that only represents 17%. Even though it's 61 degrees. And then I would just keep doing the exact same thing. So I just keep going through until I've graphed everything that I need to graph. So if I wanted to do next my basketball, be like, all right, well, take my my protractor, get to 104 degrees, get my angle, try my best to rotate in this crazy software. And then once that's done, it ended up being 105 degrees, but remember what we said about we were off by 1 degree. Once that's done, I'd be like, all right, well, basketball. And basketball ends up representing 29%, and then all I have left is the 14% for baseball. That's really all it is for circle graphs. You have to figure out what your angle is by solving for x, just like we did for all the other ones. So 29 over 100, the percent over 100 is equal to x over 360. Figure out what my angle is, use my compass to solve, and from there, that's it. So I hope this video was helpful for making circle graphs. Make sure you practice, and see you guys in class. Take care.